Hello everyone, how are you? How are you doing today? How are you? How are you? How are you? Happy Wednesday. All right, y'all. Y'all know I love being outside until a bug come by me and then I'm ready to have a heart attack. What's something exciting you guys did today? What's some good news? What's something major? All right, y'all, I'm going to get started. So today's topic is ouch. So, the last couple of days, so my mom had surgery last week, and I've been checking on her every day and seeing how she's doing, and she's doing well. Thank you for those who've been praying for her. And in speaking with her, she was talking about one of her good friends and how they were saying how they were so happy that at this age they still are able to live very independently, and we happy she can live independently too. But she can still live independently, and she was just going on and on. And so we then started. A person came up, and she started telling me about this person and how some negative things have occurred in this person's life. And I had to be very slow to speak because this person had sent me a message. It was a Facebook clip, and this was a couple years ago. And the Facebook clip basically was a young man stating that women that have children are only good for one thing, and y'all already know what he was going with that. I didn't respond to him. I didn't acknowledge that I had received it. I just didn't say anything. And so when my mom was telling me some of these negative things that have been going on with him, I had to be very quiet. I had to make sure that I didn't have a nan kind of attitude, because I don't want to hear anybody going through hardship. And so then that happened. Then I got a phone call while sitting here in my house watching a movie, and then I got a phone call from someone, and I was like, now why is this person calling me? And they were calling me to tell me that a mutual friend that we have has fallen very ill. And this person also has done some things. And so I was like, okay, God, now this is two different people. What you want me to learn in this? What's the lesson in this? I didn't laugh or get excited that these people were having a hard time. Not at all. Actually, when she told me, when I got the phone call about the second person, we went into prayer. My house went into prayer for that person. I didn't pray for the first person. I can be honest about that, because it wasn't like, there's some life altering things that have occurred, but it's not like, oh my gosh, right? But I thought, as I sit in my quiet place, I thought about Genesis 16:13, and that's where Hagar has the experience with God, and she calls him Elroy, and it's the God that sees me. And so I had to take a moment and think about the God that sees me. Lord, this information was given not from a place of either person wasn't gossiping. It was just like, this is where these people are. And I'm happy that in where they were, I didn't choose to have a nan, like, oh, that's what they get. They did this to me, so I'm happy this. And I'm very, very, very careful, because I'm sure I'm way too transparent with y'all. Sometimes I get mad at myself, like I talk too much with them. But I remember sharing with you that a gentleman had stole a great deal of money from me, and I found out years later that he died, and it was a very agonizing death. And I was like, okay, Lord, I just started thinking, and I was like, what is my responsibility in all this? What do you want me to do in this? And I started thinking about Genesis 37:23 through 28. And we know that's the story of Joseph and his brothers threw him in the pit. Because I was like, God, who had people mistreat them, and they still had to be good to those people. They still had to be kind to those people. And Joseph popped up. Like, I did a Google search, because I was like, I can't think of anybody, and of course Joseph pops up. And so I just started studying that. And, we know, I'm not going to go into the whole story. I'm not going to read any of those scriptures, because we didn't beat Joseph. We know Joseph. But Joseph his brothers mistreat him, yet he still, we find in Genesis 42:25 through 38, he gives his brothers food after there's this big phantom, and so and then again he does it again when he gives food to his father in Genesis 47 verses 1 through 25. And I just had to sit there with God in that moment, and I was like, okay, God, we read these stories, we want to be quick to quote scriptures to other people, but when it comes to us having to act out our Christian walk, sometimes we don't want to do that. It really is an ouch. Like, ooh, I don't want to have to pray for that person. I don't want to have to do these things. I don't want to even have to forgive them for what they did to me. They suffering in good form. That's what they got coming. But that's not of Christ. It's not. We got the examples, of course. Somebody gonna be like, well, what about David? David prayed for his enemies. He did. But we live under a new set of rules, right? Grace and mercy. What does Christ tell us to do? Y'all, the book just, what does Christ tell us to do? And so I was thinking, Lord, how do you want me to treat people that mistreat me? And the reality is, he wants us to forgive them. He wants us to love our enemies and trust God for his vengeance. We don't got to do any kind of vengeance. I mean, not even a little bit. We want to. I know I want to. But we don't have to. We don't have to do any vengeance, because he can whoop them better than any of us ever could. And so in Ephesians 4:32, that's when we start talking about that, forgiving those, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave us. We also know that, there's several scriptures. We got Matthew chapter 6:14 through 15. And it, the way we forgive other people is how God is going to forgive us. And we have Romans 12:19. And But we got to leave room for God's wrath. So if we go cutting up, God don't have to, there is no wrath for him to do. So we got to leave room for his wrath. Then we have Colossians 3:13. And it says to bear one another, forgiving each other. We gotta forgive each other, that we also may be forgiven by our Lord. I'm too raggedy to be walking around here not forgiving people for fear that God won't forgive me. When you start to understand, you also understand that forgiveness isn't for you, it's for that, for that other person, it's for you. It frees you up. They don't know how you feeling. They don't know. They done moved on with their life. And then we have Luke 17:3-4. If someone sins against you 7 times a day and repents 7 times, we must forgive them. Now let me explain. Just because I forgive you doesn't mean you get to come back to a seat in my table. You can lose access to me, and that's okay. I tell people all the time, just because you lost me as a friend doesn't mean you gained me as an enemy. You just lost at that level of access to me. And that's okay. It's okay, because our obviously our season has come to an end. And then it says, what does God, I asked, I said, well, what does God do to people that mistreat us? And he punishes and repays. Like he said, let him do the vengeance. Now, I never wanted the things to happen to those 3 individuals, but they had to suffer some consequences for some things that they did. And one thing that I want to say, we're always so focused on this relationship, the man and God relationship, our relationship with God, that we forget about this relationship. So sometimes we'll get it right with God, but we won't get it right with our fellow brother. And so we know that in 1 John 4:20, it says, how do you love me whom you've never seen, and hate your brother who you see every day? So we think, oh, well, I asked God for forgiveness. You got to come back and ask me for forgiveness. I got to come and ask you for forgiveness. We got to do better with that. We think, oh, well, we'll just not talk about it anymore. We'll just move on. Or when the person brings it up to you, telling you that it hurts, oh, you need to get over that. You don't have a right to tell me to get over something. What you have to do is hear what I'm saying, and let's try to work this out together. Now, there comes a point that you may not be able to work it. Sometimes the offense is so outrageous that we can't move beyond it. You know, I say all the time, your apology has to be as loud as your offense. Like, I remember being in a Bible class, and a sister was there, and it wasn't even against me, but she lashed out at another sister in this Bible class, and then she went in private and apologized to her. But you lashed out in an open forum. You know, but you secretly apologize. Well, how come if you felt comfortable enough to secretly apologize, why didn't you secretly had a conversation with her that you chose to have in an open forum? Well, all right, y'all. That's it. Y'all know this is just a little chat from my heart to y'all ears. But we need to pray. Make sure we praying for our enemies. Pray for those that mistreat us. And if at any point they need us, are you willing to feed your enemy? I had to sit with that. I had to sit with Elroy, the God that sees me, because I had to ask myself, if the one person can't call me because they done passed away, but if either one of those people called me, would I be willing to feed my enemy? And I don't even consider them an enemy, but they did mistreat me, right? So would I be willing? I'm gonna just leave y'all with that same question. Are you willing to act out the scriptures, or are you just willing to talk about the scriptures? That's a different kind of level of spiritual maturity, and it sometimes hurts. All right, y'all. Love you all. Have an amazing day. Bye.